I believe that it is an essential component of our democracy. There has never been, I was going to say never been an elected official who liked their headlines. I think there's probably no public figure who has ever liked their headlines. It's okay. It's part of the process. You know, if you're the president of the United States or governor of a state or whatever, you don't take that job thinking you're not going to get scrutinized. You're going to get scrutinized, and it's healthy. And somebody very, what the president should say is, this is right, this is good, I'm glad I'm being scrutinized, and that would be so secure and confident. But it's really dangerous to demonize the media. It's dangerous to call the media lowlifes. It's dangerous to say that they're the enemy of the people. We live in a society where it's not just the laws of the land that protect us. We do have freedom of press. It's in the Constitution. But it's also the social norms that protect us. It works because we believe those words on that piece of paper. And every time you attack that, you're eroding it a little bit around the edges. Now look, I don't want to be dramatic here. We are so robust in this country, the media is going to be fine. We're going to push through this. And by the way, Marty Barron would tell you, this is a super important point. He will always say, when he meets with the newsroom, I've heard him say it many times, I say it myself when I meet with journalists at the Washington Post. Marty says, the administration may be at war with us. We are not at war with the administration. Just do the work. Just do the work. That's Marty's phrase.
So you have, I didn't mention the president, but you mentioned the president, so since you mentioned the president, have you met the president?
He was a lawyer, wasn't he?
Right. So you've met the president on a couple occasions, and you talked to him very much. Does he call you in for lunch or dinner? Not that much?
Well, I'll keep my conversations with the president to myself. But yes, I've had a couple of conversations with him.
And this doesn't make you think you want the job yourself, though, right? It's not a job you would ever aspire to.
Are you asking me if I would run for president?
Yes.
How many kinds of smart there are? There are a lot of kinds of smart. There are a lot of kinds of stupid, too. But there are, I see people all the time who I know they wouldn't have gotten A+ on, their calculus exams, but they're incredibly smart. But yes, I was a very good student.
Right. So you ultimately moved into high school in Miami.
Yes.
And then you were valedictorian in every class.
Yes.
And then you gave a speech as the valedictorian saying you thought we should colonize space or something like that?
I did. It was 1982. I graduated from high school in 1982. Big public high school, Miami Palmetto Senior High. Go Panthers! There were 750 kids in my graduating class, and I loved high school. I had so much fun. We had I lost my library privileges because I laughed too loudly in the library. And
what about that laugh? Where did you get that laugh from? It is distinctive.
I've had that laugh all my life. There was not that short, there was a multi-year period where my brother and sister would not see a movie with me because they thought it was too embarrassing. But I don't know why I have this laugh. It's just, and I laugh easily and often. The people who know me, you ask my mom or anybody who knows me well, and they'll say, if Jeff's unhappy, wait 5 minutes. And I can't maintain unhappiness. I guess I have, good serotonin levels or something.
So you graduated as valedictorian. You decided to go to Princeton. How come you decided to go to Princeton?
Because I wanted to be a theoretical physicist. And so I went to Princeton, and I was a really good student, as I pointed out already. I got A+ on almost everything. I was in the honors physics track, which starts out with 100 students, and by the time you get to quantum mechanics, it's like 30. So I'm in quantum mechanics. I think this is like junior year, and I've also been taking a bunch of computer science classes and electrical engineering classes, which I'm also enjoying. And I can't solve this partial differential equation. It's really, really hard. And I've been studying with my roommate Joe, who also is really good at math. And the two of us worked on this one homework problem for 3 hours. and got nowhere. And we finally said, we looked up at each other over the table at the same moment. We said, Yo Santa. Because Yo Santa was the smartest guy at Princeton. And we went to Yo Santa's room, and he was Sri Lankan. And in the Facebook, which was an actual paper book at that time, his name was 3 lines long, because I guess in Sri Lanka, when you do something good for the king, they give you an extra syllable on your name. And so he had a super long last name. The most humble, wonderful guy. And we show him this problem. And he looks at it, he stares at it for a while, and he says, cosine. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, that's the answer. And I'm like, that's the answer? And he's like, yeah, let me show you. So he brings us into his room, he sits us down, he writes out 3 pages of detailed algebra, everything crosses out, and the answer is cosine. And I said, listen, Yo Santa, did you just do that in your head? And he said, no, that would be impossible. 3 years ago, I solved a very similar problem, and I was able to map this problem onto that problem, and then it was immediately obvious that the answer was cosine. And that was an important moment for me, because that was the very moment when I realized I was never going to be a great theoretical physicist. And so I started doing some soul searching. I was like, that is a magic trick. It's the people who, theoretical physics, in most occupations, if you're in the 90th percentile or above, you're going to contribute. In theoretical physics, you got to be like one of the top 50 people in the world, or you're really just not helping out much. And so I was very clear that I saw the writing on the wall, and I changed my major very quickly to electrical engineering and computer
But you
science.
graduated summa cum laude,
I graduated summa cum laude,
Phi Beta Kappa,
Phi Beta Kappa.
and then you went into the highest calling of mankind, finance.
Yes, I went to New York City, and I ended up working at a quantitative hedge fund run by a brilliant man named David Shaw, D.E. Shaw and Co. And I started there when there were only 30 people. When I left, there were about 300. And David is still one of the most brilliant people I've ever met. I learned so much from him. I used a lot of his ideas and principles on things like HR and recruiting and what kind of people to hire when I started.
It's a very, very good, well-known hedge fund, and you were a star there, as I understand. What propelled you to say, I'm quitting this, I'm going to start a company selling books over the internet, I'm going to do it from Seattle? Where did that idea come from?
I came across the fact, so this is 1994, nobody has heard of the internet. Very, very few people. It was used at that time mostly by scientists and physicists and things like that. We used it a little bit at D.E. Shaw for some things, but not much. And I came across the fact that the web, World Wide Web, was growing at something like 2,300% a year. This is in 1994, and anything growing that fast is, even if its baseline usage today is tiny, it's growing so fast, it's gonna be big. And so I looked at that and I was like, there's gotta be, I should come up with a business idea and that get, on the internet, and then let the internet grow around this, and we can keep working on it. And so I made a list of products that I might sell online, and I started force ranking them. And I picked books because books is super unusual in one respect, which is that there are more book items in the book category than there are items in any other category. There are 3 million different books active and in print around the world at any given time. So the founding idea of Amazon was to build universal selection of books. The biggest bookstores only had 150,000 titles. And so that's what I did, and I hired a small team. We built the software. I moved to Seattle.
Why'd you pick Seattle? Because of Microsoft?
Yeah, it was 2 things. The largest book warehouse in the world at that time was nearby in a town called Roseburg, Oregon, and then also the recruiting pool that was available from Microsoft.
And when you told your parents you were going to quit D.E. Shaw, where you're successful, making presumably a fair amount of money, and you told your wife, Mackenzie, that you're going to move across the country, what did they all say?
They were immediately and reflexively supportive right after they asked the question, what's the internet? But this is right. With your loved ones, you bet on them. You're not betting on the idea. You are betting on the person. When I told my boss, David Shaw, that I was going to do this thing, he went on a long walk with him in Central Park, and he said, finally, after a lot of listening, he said, you know what, Jeff? this is a really good idea. I think you're onto a good idea here, but this would be a better idea for somebody who didn't already have a good job. And that actually made so much sense to me that he convinced me to think about it for 2 days before making a final decision. And that was, and it's one of those decisions I made with my heart and not my head. And I basically said, I don't want to regret, when I'm 80, now 90, I want to have minimized the number of regrets that I have in my life. And most of our regrets are actually omission. They're things we didn't try. It's the path untraveled. Those are the things that haunt us.
Well,
and so anyway,
I have one of those that relates to this.
I know what you're going
When
to
you
say.
were trying to get the bibliography of books in print to sell, you went to a company that my firm owned,
Baker and Taylor.
Baker and Taylor, which had started in 1839, never made a profit since 1839. It was always break even. And as I understand it, the salesman was told by you that you would give him a small piece of the company you were starting. You didn't have a lot of cash. Our salesman said, no, we don't want a piece of a company. We want some cash.
Yeah.
So you gave some cash. And later when I heard about this, I flew out to see you in your ramshackle little office building.
Yes.
And I said, I think that
This is
deal...
like 1997.
Right.
This is a long time ago, the first time we met.
And so I said, that deal wasn't so good. We'd like a piece of the company, whatever you were thinking of giving us. And you were actually very gracious. You didn't say, get out of here, I don't need you anymore. You said, look, I don't really need you, frankly, but you were helpful in the beginning, so we'll cut up the deal, and I'll give you a little piece of the stock.
Yeah.
And you did, and that stock today is worth about $5 billion. Unfortunately, we sold it right at the IPO.
Yeah.
So,
but it's a testament to your character that doesn't bother you.
it does bother me. I think about it every day. But I do remember when I went out there, you had your desks were tables. You had the doors were
we still do.
And you were telling me that you had to go deliver the books to the post office yourself.
I don't still deliver to them, but I was doing that for years.
And I
was packing boxes on my hands and knees. In the first month, I was packing boxes on my hands and knees on the hard cement floors. And with somebody else standing next to me, kneeling next to me, we're packing. And I said, you know what we need? Knee pads. This is killing my knees. And this guy packing alongside me said, we need packing tables. And I was like, that's the most brilliant idea I've ever heard. And the next day I went and bought packing tables and it like doubled our productivity.
Where did the name Amazon come from?
Earth's biggest river, Earth's biggest selection.
Okay, that seems simple. Was that an easy choice, or were there other candidates?
Well, the first name I named Cadabra. It's really hard to impress upon you how small this beginning was. But when I was driving to Seattle, I wanted to hit the ground running. I wanted to have a company incorporated, and I wanted to have bank accounts set up, and so I called a friend, and he recommended his lawyer to me. It turned out this guy was actually his divorce attorney. But this guy incorporated the company for me and set up bank accounts, and said, I need to know what name you want the company to be for the incorporation papers. And I said, this is over the phone, I said, Cadabra, like abracadabra, but I just said Cadabra. And he said, Cadaver? And I was like, okay, that's not going to work. But I'm like, go ahead with Cadabra for now, and I'll change it. And so like 3 months later, I changed it to Amazon.
Okay. So what propelled you to sell things more than books? And obviously, if you're only selling books today, you wouldn't be the richest man in the world, presumably. It's the idea that you're selling other things. When did you first get the idea to sell other things?
After books, we started selling music, and then we started selling videos. And then I got smart, and I emailed 1,000 randomly selected customers and asked them, besides the things we sell today, what would you like to see us sell? And that answer came back incredibly long-tailed. People said, basically the way they answered the question was with whatever they were looking for at that moment. So like I remember one of the answers was, I wish you sold windshield wiper blades because I really need windshield wiper blades. And I thought to myself, we can sell anything this way. And then we launched electronics and toys and many other categories over time. And the vision became, because you read the original business plan, it's just books.
Well, in 1997, you went public.
Yeah.
And the value of the company was under $1 billion, then maybe 600 million or something.
Three something, I think.
Right.
At our IPO.
So,
and then went underwater for a while.
right, your stock at one point I think went to $100, but then it went down to $6 or something like that.
At the peak of the internet bubble, our stock peaked somewhere around $113.
Nice.
And then after the internet bubble, busted open, our stock went down to 6. It went from 113 to 6 in less than a year. My annual shareholder that year starts with a one-word sentence, and that one-word sentence is the word ouch.
So most of those internet companies of the dot-com era are out of business.
Yeah.
You survived. What was it that made you to survive and virtually the rest of them are gone?
Well, that whole period is very interesting because the stock is not the company and the company is not the stock. And so as I watched the stock fall from 113 to 6, I was also watching all of our internal business metrics, number of customers, profit per unit, everything you can imagine, defects, etc. Every single thing about the business was getting better and fast. And so as the stock price was going the wrong way, everything inside the company was going the right way. And we didn't need to go back to the capital markets. We didn't need more money. The only reason, a financial bust like the internet bubble bursting is, makes it really hard to raise money. But, we already had the money we needed. So we just needed to continue to progress.
Well, Wall Street kept saying, well, Amazon's not making any money. They're just getting customers. Where are the profits? Where are the profits? And Wall Street kept beating you up on that. And your response was, I don't really care what you think.
Well, I was on television with Tom Brokaw. He pulled together half a dozen internet entrepreneurs from that era. This is, I think it was right before the bubble burst, maybe, or right after, I can't remember, but in that area. And he was interviewing all of us, and he finally turned to me, and he said, Mr. Bezos, can you even spell profit? Tom, by the way, Tom Brokaw is now one of my good friends, but he said, can you even spell profit? And I said, sure, P-R-O-P-H-E-T. And he burst out laughing. But look, Amazon was, people always accused us of selling dollar bills for 90 cents. I said, look, anybody can do that and grow revenues. That's not what we're doing. We always had positive gross margins. It's a fixed cost business, and so what I could see is that from the internal metrics is that at a certain volume level, we would cover our fixed costs and the company would be profitable.
So who came up with the idea of Prime? Prime seems to be a great way to get money in advance of people actually getting the services.
Yeah.
Whose idea was
Actually,
that?
it's very interesting. I love Blue Origin, I love the Washington Post, but Amazon is my full-time job. And I get to invent, I get to live 2 to 3 years in the future. And most of the invention we do there is, somebody has an idea and then other people improve the idea and other people come up with objections why it can never work, and then we solve those objections. And it's a very fun process. Prime, there were a couple of things. One of our board members, Bean Gordon, always wanted us to have a loyalty program. And he would bring this up at every board meeting. And and the loyalty programs that we would think about were things like frequent flyer mile programs, which don't really work in a business like Amazon, in my opinion. There are a lot of reasons that they work for airlines, but that's different. And there are structural differences. So we kept thinking, but we're always wondering, what could a loyalty program be? And then, actually kind of a junior software engineer came up with this idea, not as a loyalty program, but this idea that we could offer people kind of an all-you-can-eat buffet of fast, free shipping. And when we modeled that, so then the finance team went and modeled that idea, and the results were horrifying. That we would offer unlimited shipping. Shipping is expensive, and customers love free shipping. So at this point, we already had something called free Super Saver shipping, where we would, in exchange for letting the product go very slow to you, and in exchange for having a certain minimum order threshold size, then you could get free shipping. But this was going to be no order threshold, so you could buy, a single $20 item or a single $10 item, and free 2-day shipping. And when we modeled this, it didn't look pretty. But we could see, I mean, again, back to that, you have to use heart and intuition, there has to be risk-taking, you have to have instinct. All the good decisions have to be made that way. You do it with a group, you do it with great humility, because, by the way, getting it wrong isn't that bad. That's the other thing. When we make mistakes, and we've made doozies like the fire phone and many other things that just didn't work out, we don't have enough time for me to list all of our failed experiments, but the big winners pay for thousands of failed experiments. So you try something like Prime, and it was very expensive at the beginning. It cost us a lot of money, because what happens when you offer a free all-you-can-eat buffet? Who shows up to the buffet first? The heavy eaters. It's scary. It's like, oh my God, did I really say as many prawns as you can eat? And so that is what happened. But surely we could see the trend lines. We could see that all kinds of customers were coming and they appreciated that service. So that's what led to.
So, by the way, you have your team together.
If you don't mind answering too long, you're sensitive to this audience. Cut me off.
So, I'm not used to cutting off the richest man in the world. So let me ask you this.
David.
When you just said that you sit around with your team and so forth, but you don't like meetings before 10 a.m.
No.
You like to get 8 hours of sleep, and you don't like PowerPoints. Explain all that. Why is that?
Okay, so I like to putter in the morning. I get up early. I go to bed early. I get up early. I like to putter in the morning. So I like to read the newspaper. I like to have coffee. I like to have breakfast with my kids before they go to school. So I have my kind of puttering time is very important to me. And so that's why I set my first meeting for 10 o'clock. I like to do my high IQ meetings before lunch. Like anything that's going to be really mentally challenging, that's a 10 o'clock meeting. And because by 5 p.m., I'm like, I can't think about that today. Let's try this again tomorrow at 10 a.m. And so then on sleep, I get 8 hours of sleep. I prioritize it, unless I'm traveling in different time zones. Sometimes it's impossible, but I am very focused on it. And for me, I need 8 hours of sleep. I think better. I have more energy. My mood is better. All these things. And think about it. As a senior executive, what do you really get paid to do? As a senior executive, you get paid to make a small number of high-quality decisions. Your job is not to make thousands of decisions every day. So let's say that I slept 6 hours a day, or let's go really crazy and say I slept 4 hours a day. So now I just got 4 so-called productive hours back. So if I was going to, have say 12 hours of productive time during any waking day, now all of a sudden I have 12 plus 4, I have 16 productive hours. So I have 33% more time to make decisions. So if I was going to make, 100 decisions, now I can make 133 decisions. But if I did that arithmetic wrong, I'm sorry. And so you make 133 decisions. Is that really worth it if the quality of those decisions might be lower because you're tired or grouchy or any number of things? Now, it's different if it's a startup company. I mean, you're really, when Amazon was 100 people, it's a different story, but Amazon's not a startup company, and all of our senior executives operate the same way I do. They work in the future, they live in the future. None of the people who report to me should really be focused on the current quarter. I always tell people, sometimes we'll have a good quarterly conference call or something, and Wall Street will like our quarterly results, and people will stop me and say, congratulations on your quarter, and I say, thank you. But what I'm really thinking is, that quarter was baked 3 years ago. Right now, I'm working on a quarter that's going to reveal itself in 2021 sometime. And that's what you need to be doing. You need to be out sort of, 2 or 3 years in advance. And if you are, and then why do I need to make 100 decisions a day? If I make like 3 good decisions a day, that's enough. And they should just be as high quality as I can make them. Warren Buffett says he's good if you make 3 good decisions a year. And so, so I really believe that. So I can't remember, your question was like a triple compound question.
Right?
I got at least two or three.
So let me ask you this.
Okay.
You have revolutionized retail, and people buy so many things over the internet. People are obsessed with buying things over the internet. By the way, when you buy over the internet, Amazon, do you ever get the wrong order? Is anything ever wrong? And what do? Do you call up and complain, or you don't have any problems?
No, I'm a customer of Amazon, hopefully like all of you in this room.
Is there one person full-time who services your account?
Sitting in this room is not an Amazon customer. See me right afterwards, and I'll walk you through it. It's I have problems sometimes, and I treat them like the same way I treat a problem that I would get from customers. My email address is famous, and I keep it and I read it. It's jeff@amazon.com. I don't see every email that I get anymore because I get too many, but I see a lot of them, and I use my curiosity to pick out certain emails. So I'll get one from a customer and there's a defect. We've done something wrong. Usually people are writing us, not always, but usually they're writing us because we've screwed up their order somehow. And so I'm looking at this, and for some reason, something seems a little odd about that one. And so I'll ask the team to do a case study and find real root cause, or causes, it's usually causes, real root causes, and then real root fixes. So that when you fix it, you're not fixing it for that one customer, you're fixing it for every customer. And that process is a gigantic part of what we do. So I would treat if I have a failed order or some bad customer experience, I would treat it just like that.
So you've revolutionized retail, as I say, but now you're in the bricks and mortar business. You bought Whole Foods.
Yeah.
What was the theory behind buying something that doesn't sell things over the internet?
Well, we're very interested in physical stores. I've been asked for years, we ever open physical stores? Literally 20 years I've been asked that question, and I always say yes, but only when we have a differentiated offering, something that's not me too, because that space, physical stores, is so well served. If we offer a Me Too product offering, it's not going to work. And it's also just, we're not very good at that. Whenever we've tried dabbling in something that's a Me Too service, we tend to get beaten. It doesn't work. Our culture is much better at pioneering and inventing, and so we have to have something that's different. And that's what Amazon Go is. It's completely different. The Amazon bookstore, completely different. And we have ideas about how to merge Prime and Whole Foods to make that. Those are still rolling out. You haven't seen them yet. But to use Amazon Prime to make Whole Foods a very differentiated experience, and continue to add technology to that. And so basically Whole Foods, I love, whenever I'm talking to, Amazon buys a lot of companies, usually they're much smaller than Whole Foods, but we buy a bunch of companies every year, and I'm always trying to assess, when I meet with the entrepreneur who founded the company, I'm always trying to figure out one thing first and foremost. Is that person a missionary or a mercenary? And the mercenaries are trying to flip their stock. The missionaries love their product or their service and love their customer, and they're trying to build a great service. By the way, the great paradox here is that it's usually the missionaries who make more money. And you can tell really quickly just by talking to people. And when I met John Mackey, who's the founder of Whole Foods, it's a missionary company. He's a missionary guy. And so what we're going to be able to do is take some of our resources, some of our technological know-how, and expand the Whole Foods mission. They have a great mission, which is to bring nourishing food to everybody, organic, nourishing food to everybody. And but we have a lot to bring to that table in terms of resources, but also in terms of operational excellence and in terms of technology know-how.
Now, one of the other companies you started within your company, which is technologically superior company, is Amazon Web Services. Where did that idea come from?
AWS has been, we started it, I don't know, a long time ago now, 15 years ago. And worked on it behind the scenes for a long time, and then finally launched it. It has become a very large company, and at AWS, we completely reinvented the way that companies buy computation. So traditionally, if you're a company and you needed computation, you would build a data center. And you'd fill that data center with servers, and you'd have to upgrade the operating systems of those servers and keep everything running, and so on and so on. None of that added any value to what the business was doing. It was kind of price of admission, undifferentiated heavy lifting. And what we saw at Amazon is we were doing that. We were building data centers for ourselves just like that. And what we saw is there was tremendous waste of effort between our applications engineers and our networking engineers, the ones who run the data centers. And as they were having to have lots of meetings and planning fleet sizes and all these like non-value added tasks. And we said, look, what we can do is develop a set of hardened APIs that allow these two groups, the applications engineers and the networking engineers, to have roadmap meetings instead of these fine-grained meetings. And then we'll expose those APIs to the applications engineers, and they can just take as much compute resources they want. And as soon as we hatched that plan, it became immediately obvious to us. We were just going to do that for ourselves. And as soon as we did that, it was immediately obvious that every company in the world was going to want this. And then a business miracle happened. This never happens. This is like the greatest piece of business luck in the history of business so far as I know. We faced no like-minded competition for 7 years. It's unbelievable. And I'll give you when I launched Amazon.com in 1995, Barnes & Noble launched BarnesandNoble.com in 1997. 2 years. That's very typical if you invent something new. We launched Kindle. Barnes & Noble launched Nook 2 years later. We launched Echo. Google launched Google Home 2 years later. When you pioneer, if you're lucky, you get a 2-year head start. Nobody gets a 7-year head start. And so that was incredible because, and I think it was a whole confluence of things. I think that the big established enterprise software companies did not see Amazon as a credible enterprise software company. And so we had this long runway to build this incredible feature-rich, and it's just so far ahead of all the other products and services available to do this work today. And the team doesn't let up. This team, led by Andy Jassy, and Teresa's here somewhere. Where are you, Teresa? Teresa's, everybody here watching knows Teresa. But this team is just, they're killers. I mean, they're just innovating on the product side so rapidly, and they're running everything so well. I'm incredibly proud of them.
Amazon itself has virtually no competition in its online sales. So who is number 2 to you in online sales? There's virtually nobody.
Our competition is where we elbow for customers is in the physical world. So in other words, when people are choosing between us, we're about 40% or so of online sales, but we're like, I don't know, one low single-digit percentage of retail sales. So 97, 98% of sales, 85% of sales is still, or more, is still in the physical world. So that's where we face competition.
But do you worry that the U.S. government might come along, or the European government say, you're so big, you're so powerful, that even though you haven't done anything that is traditionally monopolistic, you're just too powerful and some regulatory thing could come and impair your business?
Well, here's what I think about that. I have a couple, I get asked this question frequently.
I thought it was an original question.
No, sorry. You do that sometimes, but that's not one of them. My view on this is very simple. All big institutions of any kind are going to be and should be examined, scrutinized, inspected. Governments should be inspected. Government institutions, big educational institutions, big nonprofits, big companies. They're going to get scrutiny. It's not personal. It's kind of what we as a society want to have happen. So that's one thing, and I remind people internally when if they don't take this personally, that will lead you in a lot of wasted energy. This is just normal. It's actually healthy. It's good. We want to live in a society where people are worried about big institutions. So that's okay. And then the second thing I think is we are so inventive that whatever regulations are promulgated or however it works, that will not stop us from serving customers. So to really, under all kind of regulatory frameworks that I can imagine, customers are still going to want low prices. They're still going to want fast delivery. They're still going to want big selection. And so these things are so fundamental. Those are the things that we do. So I would say that. I would say one more thing, as long as we're talking about big companies, is it's really important that politicians and others they need to understand the value that big companies bring, and not demonize or vilify business in general, or especially not business. Well, they shouldn't vilify big companies, and they shouldn't vilify business in general, for sure. And the reason is simple. There are certain things that only big companies can do. You know, I've seen this the whole way. I know what Amazon could do when we were 10 people, and I know what we could do when we were 1,000 people, and I know what we could do when we were 10,000, and I know what we can do today when we're 500,000. And to give you a more vivid example of this, I love garage entrepreneurs. I invest in a lot of their companies. I know many of them, but nobody in their garage is going to build an all carbon fiber, fuel efficient Boeing 787. It's not going to happen. You need Boeing to do that. If you like your iPhone, you need Apple to do that. You need Samsung to do that. These are things that that are well functioning. The entrepreneurial capitalism does those kinds of things very well. And then there are market failures where nobody takes care of then you look towards philanthropy and towards government. So you need different models for different things. But this world would be really bad without Boeing and without Apple and without Samsung and so on.
So one of your passions is not just Amazon, but it's outer space and space travel and
Yeah.
Blue Origin. So you've started Blue Origin a little bit in secret, then you made it public. You're putting $1 billion or more of your own personal capital into it every year.
Next year it'll be more for the first time.
All right, and what are you going to get out of it? Are we going to have people going into space? What is the purpose?
This is the most important work I'm doing, and I have great conviction about that. It is, it's a simple argument. This is the best planet. We have now sent robotic probes to every planet in this solar system. Believe me, this is the good one. My friends who say they want to move to Mars, I say, look, do me a favor, move to the top of Mount Everest for a year first, because that's a garden paradise compared to Mars. And so this gem of a planet, we're finally, as a species, big enough to really impact it. And so, for thousands and thousands of years, Earth was really big and humanity was really small. That's not true anymore. And so we face a choice as we move forward. We're going to have to decide whether we want a civilization of stasis, which we could do. That's a legitimate choice. What does it mean? It means we will have to cap population. We will have to cap energy usage per capita. So people don't think about how much energy they use. Your metabolic rate as an animal, you use about 100 watts of power. So you use about the same amount of power as a 100-watt light bulb. But your civilizational metabolic rate, so much you're using when because you're just going about your life, all these lights and driving your cars and your vehicles and flying across the country and whatever you're doing that uses energy, you're using on average about 10,000 watts. And the less developed world, by the way, they want to be where we are. So there's going to be a lot of energy used. Energy usage for a long, long time has been growing at a few percent a year, even as efficiency has grown very fast. So we're always getting more efficient, and even though we're getting more efficient, we keep using more energy. And that's a big part of the reason. Energy is so fundamental. That's a big part of the reason that we have the lifestyle we have as the modern civilization. It takes a lot of energy. And so do you want that to continue for your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren? In other words, I want my grandchildren's grandchildren to be using way more energy per capita than I am. And I would like to see not have a population cap. I wish there were 1 trillion humans in the solar system. Then there would be 1,000 Einsteins and 1,000 Mozarts. But we don't have that long. If you take current baseline global energy usage and compound it at just a few percent a year for just a few hundred years, such is the power of compounding, you have to cover the entire surface of the Earth in solar cells. That is not going to happen. So as a result, that we can be sure of, that's not going to happen. So what will that lead to? It'll lead to stasis. I don't even think stasis is compatible with liberty. So there's all sorts of problems that we are about to face because for the first time in our civilizational history going back thousands of years, we're now big compared to the size of the planet. We can fix that problem. But we can fix it in exactly one way, by moving out into the solar system. And so my role in that is I want to build reusable space vehicles. That's the heavy lifting. Amazon was able to get started with only $1 million in capital, and because I got to ride on the back of the credit card system, I got to ride on the back of the pre-existing transportation network that could deliver packages, the pre-existing telecommunications network that could allow people to connect to our servers. All of that would have been hundreds of billions of dollars in capex, but the heavy lifting was already in place. And that's what allowed Facebook, if you think about it, 2 kids in a dorm room made this $500 billion market cap company in an incredibly less than 2 decades. That's unbelievable. And so, but that can't happen in space. There's no way 2 kids in a dorm room can start a space company of any significance because the price of admission is so high. And so I want to build space infrastructure so that the next generations of people can use that infrastructure the same way I used UPS and FedEx and so on to build Amazon. And so that's what Blue Origin is all about.
So do you ultimately want that to be your legacy, or Amazon, and what would you like to have as your legacy?
World's oldest man. That's a famous line I like, but the real thing is, it'll be whatever it's going to be. I'm going to be proud of the things I live my life in such a way that when in a quiet moment of reflection, I'm thinking back on my life, that I have as few regrets as possible. And I don't, what will my legacy be? I have no idea. And I don't even want to spend a lot of time thinking about it.
You intend to give away the bulk of your fortune at some point in your lifetime?
I tend to give away, I don't know how much of it I'm going to give away. I'm also going to invest a lot of it in Blue Origin. So for me, I start with mission. And I think, we have so far figured out 3 ways. If you have a mission, you can do it with government, you can do it with nonprofit, and you can do it with for-profit. If you can figure out how to do it with for-profit, that has a lot of advantages for many reasons. One, it's self-sustaining. So, we don't need, here's my iPhone. The last thing we need is a nonprofit company making phones. It turns out there's a healthy, competitive ecosystem that likes to build these things. There's no market failure here. If, like the Gates Foundation, you look at room temperature vaccines, there's no market for room temperature vaccines. Anybody who can afford a vaccine can also afford a refrigerator. And so you have to start solving problems like that have no market solution. And then you get to other things like the court system and the military and so on. You can't even figure out a nonprofit model. So the real answer to your question is, I'm going to give away a lot of money in a nonprofit model, but I'm also going to invest a lot of money in something that any rational investor would say is a really bad investment, which is Blue Origin, but I think it's super important. And if I can't make Blue Origin a for-profit thing, maybe I'll convert it to nonprofit at some distant point in the future. But that would be, I wouldn't want that. I want it to be a thriving ecosystem, more like UPS and FedEx.
Well, the trick in living long is being healthy. How do you stay in shape?
I exercise, which I enjoy. So for me, that's not a problem.
And how do you deal with the wealth with respect to your children? I mean, how do you shield them from the effects of this enormous wealth?
I don't really shield them. They're very, very mature. Kids are smart. They know what's going on. My oldest son, when he was 12, I asked him, do your classmates ever talk about this? He said, I'm sure. So what do you tell them? I told them my life is normal to me. And I thought, wow, that's so profound, because everybody's life is normal to them. We all have that. We all share that.
And when you took your oldest son to college this year, you carried his books up the steps like everybody else?
Yeah, I helped him move in to his dorm and with my wife, and it was bittersweet. It was fun. It was also sad. I didn't get sad till the day before.
Well, let's just close with your wife. We haven't mentioned her.
Yeah.
She's a Princeton graduate. She's a novelist, and she's been supportive of everything you're doing, right?
Yeah.
And you would like to Say anything else about her?
I was waiting for the question. Okay. We've been married 25 years. She also is a summa cum laude graduate from Princeton. We didn't meet there. We met in New York City at D.E. Shaw & Co., where we worked. We got engaged. We dated for 3 months. We were engaged for 3 months, and then got married. So our whole kind of dating engagement period was only 6 months long. I would like to take a moment to talk about my parents, if that's okay. You didn't ask me, but I would like to. They're here in the audience, and my parents are. Thank you guys. You get different gifts in life, and one of the great gifts I got is my mom and dad. It's amazing. My highest admiration is withheld for those people. We all know some of them. I know several of them who had terrible parents. Maybe they were abusive, whatever it is. And some of those people who so admirably break that cycle and pull out and make that all work. I did not have that situation. I was always loved. My parents loved me unconditionally. And by the way, it was pretty tough for them. She doesn't talk about it that much, but my mom had me when she was 17 years old. She was a high school student in Albuquerque, New Mexico. You could ask her, but I'm pretty sure that wasn't cool in 1964 to be a pregnant mom in high school in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And in fact, my grandfather, who is another incredibly important figure in my life, went to bat for her, and because the high school wanted to kick her out. You weren't allowed to be pregnant in high school there. And my grandfather said, you can't kick her out, it's a public school, she gets to go to school. And they negotiated for a while, and the principal finally said, okay, she can stay and finish high school, but she can't do any extracurricular activities, and she can't have a locker. And I know. And then my grandfather, being a very wise man, he was like, done, we'll take that deal. And so she finished high school, she had me, and then she married my dad. My dad is my real dad, not my biological dad. His name is Mike. He's a Cuban immigrant. He came here as part of Operation Pedro Pan. In fact, was put up by a Catholic mission not too far from here in Wilmington, Delaware, and then got a scholarship to college in Albuquerque, which is where he met my mom. So I have a kind of a fairy tale story. And my grandfather, possibly because, I'm pretty sure because my parents were so young, starting at age 4, he would take me every summer on his ranch. And it was the most spectacular. From age 4 to 16, I basically spent every summer working alongside him on the ranch. He was the most resourceful man. He would, he did all his own veterinary work. He would even make his own needles. He would pound the wire with an oxyacetylene torch and drill a little hole in it and sharpen it and make a suture, like make a needle that he could suture up the cattle with. Some of the cattle even survived. And he was a remarkable man and a huge part of all of our lives. But it is, you don't realize, you look back and, if you don't have these parents, it's so important. So it's just a really big deal. And my grandfather too, he's like a second set of parents for me.
Jeff, I want to thank you for a very interesting conversation, and I want to offer you the first honorary membership in the Economic Club of Washington. I hope you'll join our club when you decide ultimately to spend more time here, as we hope you will. This is a copy of the original map of the District of Columbia as designed by Pierre L'Enfant. We hope you'll take this as a gift. We also have here a leather-bound copy of the first book ever sold on Amazon.
Oh, wow. Fluid Concepts and Creative Analogies. Yeah, the Douglas Hofstadter book. You got it right.
I'm glad of that. And
look at that. That's really cool.
And courtesy of Ted Leonsis, one of the owners of signed
He is a super interviewer.